I'd like to bring this meeting to order. Apologize for the late start to all that are in attendance. Can we start with the pledge?
Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible.
I'd like to announce that we just came out of executive session. We discussed real estate transaction, personnel, and student issues. Did I miss anything? Okay. Terry, roll call.
Mr. Clauser.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Dr. Gatachu. Dr. Green.
Here.
Mrs. Heater.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Reichard.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Brookhart.
Here. 1.3, the minutes. The board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from the December 5th, 2022 reorganization meeting as presented. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 1.4, December 5th, 2022 board meeting. This is our regular meeting. Following reorganization, the board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from the December 5th, 2022 regular board meeting as presented. Motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Got it.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Board administrative announcements. 2.1, Finance and Budget Committee report. Mr. Vognetz.
We had our Finance Committee meeting on January 3rd. We went over our annual financial report. The Act 1 index is added to tonight's agenda. We checked on the status of SRS 3. In summary of 2021 revenues and expenses, we set up a budgeting timeline and future meeting timeline. The next meeting is the first Tuesday of next month.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Vognetz? And understanding, I believe, that we're going to have a report on the annual financial report coming up, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Academic Affairs Committee report. Ms. Heater.
Yes. So we will have our first meeting on January 11th at 6:30 at the high school LGI. And I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Moser, all of this as well as Mrs. Need. And we will be talking a lot about curriculum. We'll be talking about adding some courses possibly, talking about the kinds of curriculum our students are receiving, research-based. Also about possibly changing the high school schedule, and we're going to also have a pathways discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for Mrs. Heater at this point? And that first meeting is coming up on, say, Wednesday?
On Wednesday, yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Reichard.
Yes, I have something, not a lot. We have had no previous meetings. We're looking to come up with one here soon. But Micro Mechanical has just completed Phase 7, and they will begin Phase 8 tomorrow on 110. Phase 8 will take approximately 3 weeks and can be completed. There are 9 phases total out in Liberty Valley that they're working with here. The rooftop units are scheduled for delivery in February, but the contractor is still waiting for confirmation from the manufacturer. Once they receive confirmation on the ship date, then we'll discuss an installation date. That's the biggest thing now, is trying to get parts.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Reichard? Thank you, Mr. Reichard. Athletics and Extracurricular Activities Committee report, Mrs. Cooper.
We had our meeting on January 5th. Our meetings are going to be the first Thursday of each month. We discussed girls volleyball. We have over 100 girls that were interested. We could start as early as fall of 2023, or by fall of 2024, at least 6 PHAC schools will have teams. The middle school would be the perfect place for these games because it's already prepared for volleyball. Also, Coach Vela attended and had a discussion with us about indoor track. He shared his interest that he thinks it should remain a club sport. We'll have more discussions on that later.
On the agenda again for next month.
Okay. Anything else for Mrs. Cooper? Dr. Need, anything you want to add on any of these? I don't mean to bypass you.
I don't think so. No, no, you're good. Thank
Other
you.
committee members, anything you'd like to add? Okay. Health and Wellness Committee report, Dr. Green.
So the Health and Wellness Committee itself hasn't met, but offshoot of the Health and Wellness Committee has met. Dr. Need assembled the DASD Mental Health Task Force, which is the main wellness and health item that we're currently targeting. The main working group has already met, and I'd like to thank a lot of the members that are here who are participating, because a lot of members of both our community and our administration and our teachers have taken an active interest in making a difference. And it's really nice to see that sort of starting to move forward with a lot of ideas about how to actually improve the mental health and wellness of the kids in our district, and the staff in our district, and the administration in our district, because all of them are important. Just as part of the update, the larger group was split into 6 subgroups, which have been meeting independently, led by Dr. Kettlewell, who I have to say thank you to. He's done a rather impressive job in coordinating for free a fairly large effort to sort of think about this. The subgroups that have been meeting have been a primary prevention group, a secondary prevention group, a tertiary prevention group, a crisis management, suicide, and dangerous assessment group, a communication with other stakeholders group, and a resource development group. And so we're hoping by March to have something that we can deliver to the board itself about possible actions and ideas for improving the mental health and wellness of both the kids, staff, and administration in our district. And I, once again, want to say I really appreciate the sheer amount of interest and effort that has been put out by people who are taking extra time in their busy lives to come and participate in these groups in genuine and meaningful ways.
Anything else on that topic? Any questions for Dr. Green? Dr. Need? Okay. Both of those?
I have the insurance.
Get the
There's
insurance
there's
too,
nothing
right?
to report
I
from
didn't
that.
think so, okay.
There
All right.
are a few task items that have to be done that we're working on, but there is nothing direct to report.
Thank you, Dr. Green. The Columbia Montour VOTEC, Mr. Clauser.
Yeah, the VOTEC board has selected, general contractors in the right word, they selected a company to oversee the construction, and as of our meeting last month, they are going to start soliciting for bids soon. They haven't done it yet, but that's coming up soon for that building project that they have over there, and that's pretty much been talk about the highlight of what's been going on over at VOTEC. That's it.
Okay. CSIU, Dr. Gatachu is not here. I'm not familiar with anything of any great consequence that's happening there that we need to report. Okay. EITC, Mr. Huron?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay. Head Start, Mr. Reichard?
Head Start, I have just a little thing that was brought to me, was Head Start, their things are going well, and they're very pleased with that. The children came back from the winter break. They were healthy and wealthy and ready to play. They received a letter from our class video pilot that reviewed will be turned will return from February 20th to March the 16th. Copy of the letter is in your packet. Let's start.
Questions for Mr. Reichert? CS Trust report. I am not familiar or aware of any additional information that's come from the CS Trust. That is the provider, the overarching group that administers medical plans for about 20 different public schools and a couple of other entities as well. I'm looking at Wendy. Have you heard anything I haven't heard? I know we only meet quarterly. There has not been a meeting, and there probably is one coming up pretty soon, I would imagine, January or February. I think the last was October, so it's, okay, yeah. They don't meet often, and as we get information, we'll provide it. The most important piece of information, I believe, at this point is there is a max increase of 8%. Is that correct? It will be passed on. We don't know exactly what that'll be, but it will not exceed that amount. Correct. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Finally, we have board goals. Policy 602 says that we're to have board goals in place as part of the budgeting process. I think that works in concert with the AFR, which we're going to get a presentation on tonight. Dr. Need has distributed the prior goals that were put in place, I believe, in 2021. There were not any last year, which is fine. We're certainly not the first public school that hasn't put goals in place every year. It happens, but it's probably good to update a bit because we're certainly dealing with a different world right now in 2023 than we were in 2021. So some of those goals may shift. In the interest of not passing around 9 different opinions for the next hour, hour and a half on our board goals, I'd like us to, if possible, and if you disagree with this, provide things, send them to Molly, send them to Jason, copy him, let them come up with some of your ideas, and if you could then bring it back. And if somebody has a different idea, please let me know that. I do believe, and I will say this publicly, that we certainly are looking at mental health goals. We're certainly looking at fiscal goals and fiscal responsibility. I would like to see us lean a little more heavily on some of the academic goals than I think we were previously when we were in that different world. I hope we can come up with something in that realm that I think is maybe a little bit lacking. I don't think there's anything that's going to really diverge too much from what we've done previously, but I think maybe those areas of emphasis, and the only way we're going to find out is if you tell us. Whether you would want to copy me or not, that's entirely up to you, but I'd like to see you be the place that these get sent. Does anybody have a problem with that as a process, or would you like to get into this a little more deeply tonight? We can certainly do that. Any thoughts? Okay, and this is again policy 602, and that is the section on budgeting and finance, and it is supposed to predate your budgeting process. It really makes no sense whatsoever to do it before you have an annual financial report, and then the budget is supposed to meet the philosophy of the board and how they establish those goals. I am open to any thoughts or suggestions, or anyone that wants to take this in a different direction. Dr. Need, anything to say? Any thoughts?
I'm certainly happy to receive those and kind of compile
Okay.
by topic sort of where people's ideas were and bring that next time.
Understanding that all 9 of us will have different wording.
Sure.
You may hear from 5, 6. You're going to have a challenge here. Mr. Moser, you're new with the academic piece of this, and buildings and grounds and athletics are both under you. Kind of anything is fair game. I hope we can condense to 5 or 6, and hopefully we can get this done pretty quickly and bring it back.
I'll do my best if we have several mental health ones to kind of combine them to say, what do we think about this?
Okay, and if there's anything really off the outrageous and off to the side, if there's just one, we'll certainly bring it in here and speak about it more. I don't really anticipate that, but we know the things that we're dealing with. We know pathways are going to be discussion. I've talked about that quite often. I know you're going to bring it up on Wednesday. That's a big one. We know the fiscal issues that we face, although I think we're going to get a word that maybe that's not quite so prodigious as we thought. We're still challenged. Anything else? Okay. Enrollment report.
Yes, so Jeff, if you go to the next screen, I know we're not quite in superintendent report, but wanted to just take a look at this. And board members, you have this broken down even into more detail, but I didn't want to single any child out because there's certain line items that are just like a particular student at a special ed program or something. But this gives you a general sense of we have 293 students who would be zoned to go to Danville schools that are currently choosing a different option than coming here to Danville, 42 at outside cyber charters, 103 at local Christian schools, 20 at what we classify as special programs for kids, 28 at Amish schools, 4 at a local nature school, and 96 students that are currently homeschooled.
And I had asked for the more detailed report, such as what you just gave us, primarily because that number 293 really struck me as a little bit out of the ordinary historically here. Typically, we know how many kids are going to VOTEC. We have a decent idea what we're going to see go to St. Joe's and St. Cyril's. The outside cyber, I thought maybe a little higher than that. It was a little bit caught off guard by the number of homeschool and those we have at Christian school, which is fine if somebody prefers a faith-based education, understood. But the fact that about 75% of the kids that live in Danville and are eligible to go to school actually go here and the other 25 do not, I thought that was different, and it was a change. So I appreciate you providing that information.
Absolutely.
And not quite sure what to make of it all just yet, but at least we know what the facts are. We still were talking about tech a little bit, too, in that 9th grade class where there's only 18 kids. That's
Right, and if we look at the next one, this is not in our normal enrollment in a report, but I just wanted to bring this information. So as I call starting the superintendency sort of like drinking from a fire hose. There's lots of information coming your way. So I'm getting my feet really wet with what's happening at the VOTEC school, and I've joined the superintendent meetings there. So did want to just make you aware of where we are number-wise there. So this is specifically the Columbia Montour Area VOTechnical School, Danville's enrollment. So looking at 1920 through where we are currently, you will see declining enrollment there. And that's something that we're really looking at as a group of superintendents locally to talk about kind of why that's happening, how we can support administration there so that we can see that, you know, grow again, how we can support some of the special education that's happening there. So it's something we're aware of locally and we're looking into. And then if you look at the next screen, you'll just see total enrollment. So this includes other districts as well. So again, you can see a decline of like 645 students to 617 as of the end. These are the end of year totals for those years. So just wanted to make you aware of that enrollment too.
Any comments, questions about anything from the enrollment report? Again, the VOTEC was really important from my perspective because we're going to spend probably about $5 million there for their project. We're going to pick up, I'm assuming, 30 to 35% of the cost because of the aid ratio here, and if our enrollment there is declining, it just seemed like something we should leave out there. It's an outlier. That number of 18 in 1 year is definitely an outlier historically for us.
And they currently have a new interim executive director who has said that he'd be willing to come speak to the board about programming there, but also about the building project. So if the board would ever be so inclined to learn more and have him come to a board meeting, he's, I just met with him on Friday. He's willing to do that.
Yeah, Dr. Lanaconis.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Dr. Lanaconis is accomplished, experienced.
He is, for sure.
And any information, if you're interested, let us know, and we can bring him in. I'm not necessarily looking for anyone to come in and recruit more of our kids. I'm a little bit sensitive to that, but if he wants to come in and talk about the programs, that's fine.
Yeah, and he specifically said he'd be happy to address the building project, so if we had any concerns about how money is being spent there or anything like that. So something to consider, and I'm happy to arrange if the board so desires.
Okay. Anything else? Go ahead, Mo.
Go ahead. That's the end of enrollment report, so happy to answer any other questions there. Now we're just kind of going into superintendent's report, but I'd like to just start superintendent's report by thanking all of you on the board. January is National Board Recognition Month. So I just want to extend my personal gratitude. You'll see sort of a pile of letters there. So you've got a little thank you from me, but more importantly, thank you from some of our primary school students. That's the more meaningful thank you probably. And I just want to take off my superintendent hat for a minute and put on my community member and mom hat and just thank you for giving your time and energy to help the students in our district. It takes community members to step up to the plate to do that so that we can function as a district. And I just know firsthand how much time and energy you all give for free to the Danville community. So thank you very much for that. We all appreciate what you do very much. I just have a couple quick updates tonight. Just wanted to let you all know that We're continuing with our comprehensive planning work as well. So not an official board committee, just something we're in the process of right now because our plan is due. And similar to what Dr. Green said, there's lots of faces in this room that are coming to that. I see Mr. Haravi here and Mrs. Bartholomew, and they're giving of their time to be a part of that process too. And we most recently were working on our district's vision statement, mission statement, and the values we want for our graduates to have as they kind of finish in Danville. So we'll be presenting that as part of our comprehensive plan. And we meet on the first Wednesday of the month and have just a great group of administrators and community members and teachers and board members that are a part of that work. So thank you to everyone for that. And then the next slide, Dr. Green did have a chance to speak about this, and so I won't belabor the point, but those subcommittees for our mental health task force are very actively working, and I'm just so thankful for the kind of passion for this topic that we have from parents and teachers and administrators in the district. So the first subcommittee, that Tier 1 group, is really looking at, when we think about Tier 1 academically and with mental health, we're thinking about what are the things that all students should experience in the classroom when it comes to mental health support. So what should the culture of the school be like? What should the culture of the classroom? Is there particular curriculum we should be using to help teachers with that? What kind of professional development do teachers need? Then our Tier 2 group is really looking at how do we recognize when a student needs more support than what's happening in the regular classroom? How are they referred and identified for that? What kind of support are we giving them? Tier 3 would be even an additional layer of support within the building, as well as now we're starting to look at community partnerships. How do we know when we should be referring to students to other programs? And how do we expand our relationship with those community partnerships? And quite honestly, even get some of them started, because we're lacking some community partnerships in this region. Our fourth group is looking at crisis management. How do we help a student who's truly in crisis? What does that process look like? And then finally, we're going to be looking at what is the role of parent education and just public relations in general when it comes to mental health? How do we really communicate to our families what we're doing to support students? And I'd also just like to thank, we've had generous community donations, and we're going to be able to bring in Daniel Patterson on April 5th and 6th, who is going to be able to speak to parents, to students, and to our staff about mental health issues. So just thankful. There are a lot of people donating their time on this really important topic, and I'm really thankful for that. I'd like to turn things over to our principals, so I'll pass it to Mr. V first to talk about some of the great things that are happening at the high school.
So there's lots of exciting activities that were going on between the last time we met and now. So the right before the holidays, the jazz band and choir, chamber choir, went to Geisinger to perform in the lobby area, which we've been doing for a handful of years now, which has been exciting. And finally, we were able to get inside. Last year, it was kind of in the loop and coming up around, I think it's the main entrance there in Geisinger, and this time we were able to be inside, which was really fun. The second thing up there is the FBLA regional competitions. There'll be pictures on the next slide for you all to see. FBLA regional competition was led or held at the Susquehanna University. Students competed there with 10 other school districts, which was exciting. We had a lot of top finishers at that event. The next thing was a staff winter scavenger hunt. So you'll see the photos of that. It was kind of cool way to get staff interested in, kind of jumping from department to department as opposed to just kind of being inside their own departments. And so it was neat to see them kind of interacting with one another. The next thing is an AP literature. Students knitted blankets for a student project. So that was cool to see. Then the Winterfest 2022 kind of went off without a hitch. However, there was a little snag because we had to release the students at 11 instead of 11:45, so they didn't get to take the full advantage of the second session that we had. But that was still good activities that were going on that day. There were 15 activities hosted by staff for the students. So that was, like I said, it was really exciting. And then the FFA students competed in their farm show activity for the log splitting competition, which you'll see that, and it's a really quite a feat that they were able to put all of it together. You should again see the photos, and if you ever get a chance to stop down to high school, it's quite the project that they undertook. So they took first, and they won it for accuracy of the build. And actually, Mr. Schultz took those students today, so it was kind of cool to see them off. And then 14 students competed at Bloomsburg University in the FISL state competition or drama competition. 2 of our students won individual awards, and they were all state, and then they placed second, which was really cool. And I will tell you that was an intense drama competition that they, I saw part of it, and basically what they do is they take, and it's a shortened version of a play, and it was absolutely amazing. And then finally, 3 of our football players made the WNEP's Super 16 Dream Team. So 3 of them will go to the Wilkes-Barre area airport to be recognized tomorrow. And according to Mr. Brennan, that was like the first time in a number of years since they actually had, it's very rare to have even 1 student go, and we have 3 students, so.
Oh, and somehow those are our Liberty Valley pictures, Jeff. I'm not sure how we got at it, if we could find the high school pictures. Maybe we missed those somehow. I'm sorry. I'm seeing them on mine. I don't know what happened in our pass over there. There we go. Keep going back. There we go. One more. One more. There we go. Thank you. I say there's the high school pictures, and then I'll turn it to Mr. Snover to tell us about the middle school. You could go to the next slide for middle school.
All right. First of all, we had our winter concert. Tom Haravi and the middle school band did an excellent job at that prior to the winter break. We had our this year's winners of the American Daughters of the American Revolution essay contest. I'd like to congratulate Jeremy from 6th grade, David from 7th grade, and Janie from 8th grade for winning that contest. I would like to publicly thank a number of organizations, Merck, the Bloom Christian Church. We have a number of community members and the faculty and staff at the Danville Middle School who all generously donated to make Christmas a little brighter for approximately 50 students through our Christmas Angels. We had a number of students and support staff that collected and took gifts to residents of a local nursing home. And finally, the last picture you'll see when we get to the next slide, again on that early dismissal day that Mr. Varhalik was just talking about, we did manage to get a full dodgeball tournament in, and because of that, we raised over $1,000 for the American Heart Association. And again, we right at the bell as the buses were getting ready to roll in, we crowned the winning team, but we managed to get it all done in the shortened amount of time and raise some nice money for a good cause. So thank you.
And I guess as a woman in the group, shout out that it was our first all-female dodgeball middle school winners, I think, too.
Yes, we've been doing this for quite
Not very happy.
However, we had a championship women's.
Yeah. And then Liberty Valley, thank you.
Okay, at Liberty Valley, we had Rachel Fang. She was selected as our winner for the Daughters of the American Revolution essay contest. And you'll see she'll be pictured along with the center, along with several other students who participated. So her essay is currently displayed in our 4th grade large group area. And her essay will now move on to the state competition. One thing we do every year is we have community Christmas trees displayed throughout the school. This year they were donated by the Dross family, so we thank the Dross family for the donation of the 3 Christmas trees. But each grade level then brings in goods and donations for different community organizations. So 3rd grade donated to the Ronald McDonald House, 4th grade donated to the Animal Resource Center, and then 5th grade donated to the Good Samaritan. So thank you to the Home and School Association for organizing that and delivering those donations throughout our community. And thank you for those, of course, who donated that way. And one area, we don't have a lot of clubs at Liberty Valley, but one of the ones that we have had for several years and now is back up and running after COVID is our art club with Mrs. Madison. And she gives Liberty Valley students in 4th and 5th grade just an opportunity to be relaxed, be social, and create some neat things, neat projects throughout the year. So Jeff, if you don't mind going over to the pictures. And you'll see Mrs. Madison up there in the top left along with some 5th graders doing their project. And if you ever walk through Liberty Valley, you'll see the art projects displayed throughout the entire school. So thank you, Mrs. Madison, one of our several advisors for different committees and organizations, but we're very thankful to have her giving up her time for that endeavor.
And then at the primary school, during the month of December, we had high school AP Lang and composition students come up and carol throughout student classrooms, all grade levels. It was very nice. They played the guitar. I don't know if the video will play, but I included a video because it was very cool to watch the students come in, and the engagement of the primary school students was just phenomenal. Woody Wolf, of course, came in to sing with all of the students. It's been a long time since we've been able to get everyone together, so this was a wonderful opportunity. And we also had an author come and talk about their book, A Trapezoid is Not a Dinosaur. All students in the building did get a book, and it was, again, an amazing time for the students. And we do have some books for our library as well.
And Head Start.
So at Head Start, we're just always learning and playing, and I just wanted to show you some pictures of putting learning the letter L through science, and the kids are making lava lamps. They're taking water, vegetable oil, food coloring, and of course glitter. You can never have enough glitter, and creating their own lava lamp.
Thank you all very much. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board on the report? Okay, I'd like to open the floor to public comment under number 4.1. Do we have any public comment on agenda items only at this time? Hearing none. Move on to, I see the annual financial report. We're going park project update next, right?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Haravi, you're up.
Got it. It's great.
All right. So I do not have a presentation for you like I did before the holidays. I have a prepared sort of statement and update, and the agenda item later that you'll be voting on, I'll kind of lay out exactly what we're thinking, so that you know. So I'm pleased to be here tonight to give you an update on the Danville School Community Park Project. Our development team, composed of DASD faculty, administration, community members, and representatives from a wide range of business organizations, has really come together to strategize, design, and begin to implement our project. At this point, I'm thrilled, really thrilled, to report that since I was here before the holidays, we've secured $30,000 in funding from our first set of community investors. That would be Hummel Station Power Plant, Service First Federal Credit Union, First Columbia Bank and Trust, and Century 21 Mertz and Associates Realtors. In the coming months, we'll be presenting plans for board approval on how to utilize our funds toward our Phase 1 goals. Just a reminder, these are things like landscaping, planting trees, getting benches, picnic tables, sort of setting the stage for the project at large. So on the topic of giving some name recognition, here is what we're thinking. Long term, we want to make sure that we recognize everybody who donates to the project. We want to make sure that on our project website, as well as on some permanent signage in the park, we have everybody listed somewhere. In the short term, we ask that we can have some space on the fencing in front of DMS to hang temporary vinyl banners, recognizing the people that are investing now, so that we can give some recognition while the park is being developed, rather than say, hey, thanks for your donation, we'll recognize you in 2 years. So for a donation of $5,000 or more, we would like to offer them space on a vinyl banner. And for donations smaller than that, right now we would like to put their name on the website. Once the park is complete, pending board approval, we would ask that we're allowed to recognize them there. And we would also ask that we're granted permission to award naming rights to donors who purchase specific items in the park, whether that be in full or in part. We think this is an important part of enticing donors to the park, and would love to have the flexibility to offer that. So I would like to thank you so much for your support of this project. It's been an amazing thing to get this community group together, to get our businesses behind this, and to make this a real partnership of school and community. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
I have a few. First of all, I really commend you and the people you're working with. It's a great idea, and I'm glad we're moving forward with it. When the money comes in, how is this working? Because this is a kind of its own account, correct?
The money actually goes in through the Community Giving Foundation.
Okay, and then
So it's tax deductible, and then we have a committee of people in the school district. You're a board representative for that, and we have community members on that committee and district representatives on that committee that money goes. Mr. Haravi's also proposing that any money expenditures would come.
Right.
Because you would need to say yes.
Okay, and these are one-time donations. This isn't, when you say 30,000, it's not 6,000 over 5 years, it's 30,000.
So all but one have been one-time donations. One of the donations was a $5,000 donation split over 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the kind of questions I was curious about. I think they become important as we move forward, because you're moving forward with things and you're going to need money in hand to do them. Is there any point at which we're going to need to consider fronting money because it hasn't been received, but part of your project is moving forward, or is it all going to be funded before work is done?
The plan is to have everything funded. When we receive funding, we come to you to ask for approval for those specific items.
Right.
You say yes, we do it.
Okay.
So I'll be here regularly over the next year.
Yeah, I'm not saying any of these to say no to anything, because I
Not at
know
all.
you did talk about this before, but I'm trying to drill down and get a little more detailed here. Is there anything that we're looking at doing, and I know you showed you and Mr. Snover the design, that would in any way need any other project that can be done at the middle school at some point? Because I've been on the board now 11 months, we've never really even talked about the future of the middle school, even though it's in the most recent feasibility study that we did. And I don't think anybody here has anything imminent. I think Mr. Snover made the comment, it looks like we're going to be here for at least 5 years, right? I think you're right. But these are still things better to talk about now than in the future. This is all adjacent to the tennis courts and over by the sewage treatment plant?
Yep. So part of the revitalization is the tennis courts.
Right.
That back toward the rear side of the school, over to where the footbridge is, all along the levee there.
Okay. Is there anything to the tennis or on the tennis courts, but up to it but not on it? We're not touching the tennis courts, is that right or not?
It's possible in a future phase that we could get funding, and there's even some government possible funding around making those like community tennis and pickleball courts. There's some specific funding around pickleball. At this point, the money he's talking about would be landscaping edge work only, is what he's talking about now.
Because there's some old agreement about those tennis courts. Somebody sent it to me when I was on the board before, and it's kind of really difficult to navigate through, and I don't even recall what was in it.
Okay.
But make sure if we do anything with the tennis courts, that you find out exactly what that was. There was something with the borough and the district, and then there was some federal money.
Okay.
Old, I mean, we're going back in the 70s, but we want to make sure on those things. Yeah, yeah. But thank you. all of you and commend you. I think it's great. Any other questions, comments on
I
this?
just have a question. So how are you getting the information out?
So our strategy for fundraising is really this: to start off in the initial stages, which we're still in. We're doing this a little bit on the quiet side. In March, we're planning to kick off a heavily publicized campaign. That way, we can go to the community and say, we've already raised this much money towards this. This is a winning cause. We would love your support. Rather than say, we have nothing. Would you please help us?
I get it. Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Just another point. First of all, I echo what Wayne said. I commend you for wherever the creativity started. It's awesome. I think that it's just a very creative way to look at some opportunities. I think it's going to enhance our district and certainly that area of our district. One thing I just have as just a general comment, I brought it up in some other discussions on the board, is when it comes to any type of banners and any of those recognitions things, I think they're wonderful and they're appropriate. But I do have some druthers about like the quality, the consistency, how we go about that aspect of it, so it does proper justice to the cause, and it also does proper reflection on what we're trying to display as a community. So I'm not necessarily looking for an answer unless you'd like to supply one, but that's just embodied in sometimes we look at these things. Banners are great when they're new, as long as they're done well. What happens when the wind blows and the sun's on them, and next thing we know, it just looks horrible. So I'm not suggesting we're going there, but I'd like to just add that into the thought process.
So part of the intent of this is that they are temporary. Just during the project construction, they are inexpensive too. So if they would get torn, ripped, blow away in the wind, hit by a car, whatever, it wouldn't take a lot to replace them. Dr. Need and I have already talked briefly about being consistent and making sure that it doesn't look too busy or for lack of a better word.
That's more of my thought process too. And not suggesting we do it, but I know I've seen
That's
things
certainly
that
very important to us, even though this is a temporary thing.
Yeah.
That it represents the Danville School District well. And again,
Set
the
that
long
standard right out of the
yes,
box.
and the long-term
This.
plan would hopefully to have something more permanent that can't damage. You know what I mean? But that we would ultimately be looking at that a little further down the line. But it would be a little more classy even than the banner on the fence, if that makes sense.
Right. Super. Thank you.
I'd certainly just love to just take a moment. I think that we said this before, but Mr. Haravi is an outstanding band teacher, and there's been no lack of quality in his band instruction, and has just given his own personal time to make this happen for the middle school. So just so thankful as a superintendent, as a community member, as a parent of a middle schooler. And when we talked about the mental health task force, if you're outside of the middle school right now, seeing the sewage treatment plant isn't awesome. So the idea that we'd have some beautiful trees, some shade, and it just be a pretty place when kids go outside for recess does a lot for students' mental health. So I just thank you for seeing a problem and saying, I'm going to donate my time and effort to a solution. So thank you.
I'm glad to see the building getting the attention. The kids go there. They spend 3 years there. They're prime years for the kids in terms of their development, and it's been a struggle to determine what the future of it is. We've been through a lot. I'm one of the older people on the board and remember floods and everything that building's been through, and we're still down there. So let's do what we can to enhance it and make it as good as we can for the kids. And if the district needs to get involved a little bit more, we can certainly talk about it. But great job.
And I
Thank
think
you.
that's also why we want to bring it in phases in terms of expenditure, because we'll be also, I hope, looking at, long-term maintenance of facilities and a plan. So we don't want to add things there that we, ultimately don't want. But I feel like trees are
it's
a great addition,
Can't argue with
regardless.
that. That's for sure. Okay.
And I think Tom is actually
next.
speaking about our next thing
Just
too.
say
Big musical arts club, big Mac club. Tom Haravi, you're up.
All right. So it was actually supposed to be a student here tonight. He was sick today, and the rest of the officers of this club have a scouting event. So here I am. So the Big Mac Club, the name was devised by the kids, of course, it's an opportunity for kids to get together with people outside of their own grade to participate in some music ensembles other than just concert band. Things like like jazz band or small groups. We have a number of kids who study their instrument privately outside of school with kids from a bunch of different grades, and they put together little ensembles with each other. We had a couple examples of these at the winter concert, but this would just be a dedicated time for these kids who are passionate about what they do to get together. And it also becomes sort of the older musicians mentor the younger ones, and it just helps advance the program that much more.
Questions, comments on that? No board action necessary, right?
So
this
later
point?
you'll see in extracurriculars like an approval of the club. It
Okay.
is a
I remember.
voluntary group.
Got it. Okay. And anything else on this? We're going to move on. The Model UN Club presentation.
Mr. Varholic, is there anyone from Model UN or anything to could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Takes students to the Model UN at Bloomsburg University. We had some open positions in that underneath student government and some other like things, but for right now, he wants to have a basically a group, almost like a club that would kind of build upon what he's already been doing with the Model UN that happens in the spring, and take those students and kind of develop it into more of a club as opposed to it just being a one-time trip. He always already devotes his time to it. He said that if it didn't get approved, he's still going to, apply to go to the Model UN in the spring. But obviously, this would be a chance for him to develop into a little bit more of a comprehensive program as opposed to what it was before. So that's all it is. And then again, it's a voluntary situation right now. So,
Any questions on Model UN? Comments? I'm a former social studies teacher. I love Model UN. I think it's great. So whatever, from my perspective, we can do to support. If there's any more information in the future, bring it.
Okay.
All right. We're good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Verholick. We are down to 5.4 in the annual financial report. Ms. Bartholomew, you're up.
Jeff, if you could go to the next slide. You'll see our revenues. We budgeted for just a hair over 44,000. Our actual revenues were 44,752. It was a 0.7% increase from the prior year. Go to the next slide. Our revenue breakdown of our local, state, and federal revenues, and obviously most of our revenue comes from local revenue. Our expenditures were at $46,216,000, which was an increase of 6% from the prior year. Higher than our budgeted expectations on expenditures. The next slide. We spent $28 million in instructional expenditures, $12 million in supports services. To pay on our debt services, the payments for the year were $2.7 million. Our bond debt at the end of the fiscal year is $43,545,000. We still have a net pension liability at the end of the year of $62 million. And our salaries and benefits about 67% of our budget. Go to the next slide. Here's a breakdown of the expenditures on tuition we paid to other institutions. We
Paid for brick and mortar charter schools was 597,000. Charter schools, 772,000. Career and tech was a little over 2 million. PA chartered schools for the deaf and blind, 56,000. And here's one schedule on our annual financial report. We have to break down how we spend our money on our different buildings. Show an equality that all buildings within the district are being funded. Slide. Currently, the 2022 fiscal year ended with a deficit of $1,463,000. We have ESSER funds that will probably be expended before the end of the 24 fiscal year. Expenditures keep rising due to the rising cost of goods and services. The annual financial report will not be finalized until the conclusion of the fiscal audit.
The first question I want to ask, couple. There was money budgeted in the federal revenue section for ESSERS 3. It's the third section of the release funds. That money has been received, correct?
Yes.
It just wasn't received that year.
Correct.
Okay, so we budgeted it in 21-22, and we budgeted like $4.2 million, but we only received 2.5. But the reason is because we received it this year. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So even though we show that deficit based on the federal money, we got the federal money. We just didn't get it in the year we budgeted.
Correct.
it.
And you'll see that adjustment when we go through our audit.
Okay. And the local money came in significantly higher than we budgeted. The earned income tax came in, and I have it written down here, $500,000 above budget. The delinquencies came in $500,000 above budget. So the local money is significantly higher than it's been before.
That has increased, yes.
Yes, by quite a bit. And the state money came in about $500,000 more than we budgeted as well. The thing that was lagging was the federal money that we just hadn't gotten yet. And it wasn't the business manager's fault. I'm assuming she got a letter that said, you're getting it. She put it in the budget, but then they didn't send it until the next year. Is that all accurate?
Yeah, they send it when they want and based on your quarterly financial reports to them as well.
But we do have it now. It did come in.
Correct, yes.
That's what you said, right, from your
Yes.
committee? All right, that's
Discuss
important.
Yes.
Finance.
Okay, because that's going to cover some of this deficit we thought we were going to see.
The majority of it, yes.
Okay.
We qualify that a little bit, quantify rather, excuse me. So right now, we just reflected, I appreciate this discussion because you and I talked a little before now. So we're saying 1.4, say 1.5 deficit, which we've talked about. So right now, what are we saying? With all those discussions and saying the monies that we had anticipated last year that didn't land in last year, that's landing in this year offsets this, but it was rhetorical, it wasn't anything quantifiable. What does all that mean?
I would think that as far as a deficit, you're probably looking at roughly, I would say, $1,000, depending on how the audit goes.
But that's also, Wendy, and I want to form this as a question, not respective of the fact that some of that was building project money, correct? Meaning that you're not going to have to continue to pay it. Once the project's over, it's paid. What you're saying is a deficit, and that expenditure amount, some of that was the Liberty Valley project. So you don't continue to pay that. That goes away. It's not a recurring deficit. It was a recurring deficit. That's one of the things that's kind of odd when you read an annual financial report. Some years you'll see, and you can look at Danville's, where we spent like $55 million. We spent $55 million because we did a project. Yeah. Some of that deficit, it looks like, was based on one-time costs toward that project, the early part, maybe architectural fees. I didn't drill down on it that much, and you may not have either.
We're also not going to continue to get the ESSER money, correct?
Exactly.
So this is what I'm trying to process,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So some of the costs are one-time expenditures,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And so that may explain part of the total deficit, right? And part of that total
of
deficit
those
was
costs
we
are gonna go away,
expected to
too.
receive money, which we didn't receive. So I guess what I'm trying to get a feel for is how much of that money that's left over as reoccurring expenses, if we were to just sort of look at everything else the same, continue to generate some form of deficit if we don't do something. That's what I'm trying to understand. Is that just $100,000 of reoccurring expenses? Is there $1.2 million of reoccurring expenses that have been partially covered by the ESSER funds that we're not realizing? Does it make sense what I'm asking?
It totally makes sense, and I don't know that you know that detail yet. I know what I think. I'm not the business manager, so I'm hesitating to say it. I know it was reported at one point, and that was not the paper's fault, it was our fault, that we had 11 positions under the ESSER's money, which I think it ends up being more like 4, and we won't be able to fund those moving forward.
But that's what I'm trying to get a feel for.
Yeah, but a lot of the costs, and when you and I talked about this, a lot of the ESSER's 3 costs aren't costs that continue because of professional development, things like that.
There's many of them that go away. There are a couple positions that we'll see. So we saw about 2.5 million in revenue that was shown, and then we have an additional several million that came in after the closure of books, so to speak, but that washes that. But that amount of money is down to around $500,000 for the upcoming year. Now, a big chunk of the costs will stop. There are positions that will stop, there are clubs that will stop, there are summer programs that will stop, and there are one-time expenditures of curriculum, trainings, those kinds of things that we just won't do. Now, the teachers community, people will feel a hit of like, oh, the last couple summers we got to do this thing and now it doesn't exist, but those were sort of special funding through COVID. I think, Wendy, we still have to dig in a little more into this budget process, and our hope in February is to present the Finance Committee with like our first look at next year's budget and where we think the difference will lay and whether there's a tax increase and what that looks like in terms of what we recommend.
Is there a dollar amount for those expenditures that we think will go away? I'm just curious, do we have some idea of what the total amount of money that bucket is?
I think it's the majority of that bucket minus the 4 positions, because you're essentially saying there's certain positions that just go away and we just literally will not have those programs again.
And there's also $150,000 that is learning loss that we
That's
haven't
in like
even,
a separate bucket that we
haven't even
haven't.
put a plan in place of how to use that yet.
There's 2 kind of ESSER's buckets. We still have one that's going to be around 500,000. That's this one that's been several million for the last couple years, and then a separate ESSER funding of around 120 that we specifically could do like in a curriculum purchase or something like that.
So forgive me, I'm slow. I just want to make sure I understand.
You're not slow.
It sounds like you're telling me that there's around between 1.5 and $2 million of expenditures that aren't going to reoccur. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
I think that that's fair to say. I think a point that Wendy is also making that we just need to be aware of is there are a lot of costs that have gone up that we need to be thoughtful about. Transportation costs, special ed costs. We're in a negotiations year right now. Even things like athletic officials cost more than they did before. So there are other things that we still have to pay that are shifting up. Heating costs are more than they were.
But if we understand that there's a, 6% or 8% increase in costs across the board, it's a very different thing in my mind, because that's unavoidable as opposed to having $2 million of expenditures that might have been budgetable or avoidable. And so that's what I'm just trying to wrap my mind around. So the final message seems to be that costs are going to go up and that we're going to have to find a way to cover those costs in the end. But that a lot of the things that caused the gap that we currently see had to do with the way accounting money came in and one-time expenditures, including expenditures on Liberty Valley. Does that sound like a fair characterization?
I think that's an excellent characterization from.
Okay.
And I'll tell you real quickly, from where we budgeted our real estate tax, we got 172,000 more than we budgeted. Our earned income tax, which is huge in Danville, it's 3-4 times as much as some districts receive. We received $502,000 more than we budgeted. our delinquent real estate taxes. We received $545,000 more than we budgeted, probably because of the pandemic and people were paying their taxes in delinquency. The earned income is probably because our former business manager was budgeting earned income low during the pandemic because everybody anticipated people being out of work for a while and maybe going as low as 10, 15, even 20%. Well, it didn't happen here. The money came in pretty well. So locally, we came in significantly higher than we thought. We budgeted probably a 0% in state. We got $500,000 more than that. So there's a lot of things that were really positive, but what is balancing that is this federal money and trying to make sense of how we coded it, what we were paying for, and in which year and when we received it, which I think Harry was trying to work through, and you talked about it in your meeting. My belief is that the district is in much better condition than we previously thought because of how well the earned income and the local income and the state revenue came in. This federal thing we got to kind of figure out. And I'm sure we're not the only district that's a little bit confused. I don't think it's
Yeah, I
just
think
Danville.
everybody's going to feel some pressure in that. The other thing that I would just encourage, and Wendy and Jason and I will work through this, is we're successful locally, which I'm thankful for, but I think that you want to look at trends and sort of mathematically look at that trend line to make your prediction for the future. And COVID has really made those numbers confusing, I guess, if you will. So like in earned income tax credit, we had a 9% increase from the year before. I wouldn't feel comfortable that we budget for another 9% increase, if that makes sense. I would probably go back to where we consistently sat more in the like 4%. So harder to, same with our property tax was like a 4.6% increase, but COVID threw off what we could expect in those numbers, I guess, if that makes sense. Jason, I'm sorry, did you? Right.
Yeah, they're not going to stay that way.
Right. They're not staying like that.
That's one we have to be careful because we actually received $587,000 in transfer taxes. We budgeted $300, so we exceeded by
Right.
$287. But the good thing is, for the current year, we budgeted $300,000.
Right.
And the same with earned income tax. The money we got in 21-22 exceeds what we budgeted for the current year by $400,000. We know the number's not going to go backward. If any people, even the school district, when people get raises, it reflects the ones that live here in your earned income tax. So we know that we're already ahead of the game there. So those are all, I think, pretty good things. Not all good news, but better than we thought
Yeah,
it was.
state funding, we can feel good about.
So it sounds like we're at least in part bailed out by some circumstances that were a little out of our control, and so we'd have
I'll
to.
be thankful for that.
Yeah, so we'd be happy that it turned out a little bit better than we thought we did, but there are still some obstacles that we need to deal with.
Having been a superintendent at Berwick, we were always envious of the earned income tax that Danville generates when you bring in $8 million. And don't forget, Danville's
guys,
earned
yeah.
income tax is almost 2.5 times higher than the districts that are 0.5. It's 1.15 here. So that's significantly higher than some districts, and it varies, and that's an old story of how that all happened and why they're all different. But that $8 million is really nice in Danville. It really offsets your real estate market when you're not.
I guess I'll look forward to February really understanding what the actual landscape is going to look at, but I'm more optimistic now than I was the last time that we sort of discussed this. And there's still some ground to cover, it sounds like. But,
Ground to cover
but because we got a little bit lucky, it's not as disastrous as it possibly could have been.
as well.
The one final thing I wanted to point out, and I appreciate the fact that you said this, Wendy. When Harry did his presentation, he said, "I'm doing this on budgeted figures." He did it with what he had. One thing he didn't have, and you mentioned it, he said our debt was $51 million. It's actually $43 million because he didn't realize that one of the borrowing events that we did was used to refinance. So it wasn't money we were going to continue to have to pay on. It was used to refinance an old bond. So the real debt amount is 43, not 51. That's on page 137 in the report. You did that. So that's a big change. Even though it's still a lot of money, it's still $8 million less, and it'll be $41 million on June 30th.
So this was a good conversation. I appreciate it. So are we saying that come February, we'll have a better actual quantifiable reflection of the status of our community's budget? Because right now we're communicating, we have 1.46 million in the hole. And now we've got these offsets and logic and all those discussions are hearty. where do we arrive at to properly reflect the position financially of this school district?
So this document says that we're 1.46 in the hole or whatever you're saying, but we actually have that money now. So when the auditing process is finished, this will be corrected, if you will. Wendy was just presenting what's in the current AFR. So that's already a correction for the 21-22 year. So that's corrected. What we hope to present in February to you is where we want to be for the 23-24 year. And so what our recommendation will be in terms of tax increase, those kind of things, where we're budgeting. And at our finance committee meeting, we've asked all the different departments to come and specifically say, like, okay, in athletics, this is where we were, this is where we're going to be, here's where we made cuts, here's where we can't make cuts, so we can break down each department. Because there are certain departments where we can make some cuts, but there are other places where costs are going up, like in transportation, fuel costs, those kinds of things. And there are places where we wouldn't recommend a cut because it wouldn't be what's right for kids. So in February, we want to present our first attempt at next year's budget. It will be a work in progress this spring, and analyzing each of those departments.
Okay. We budgeted, I just want to clarify once again, and then I'll stop. We budgeted $4.2 million in federal money in 21-22. We received about 2.5. Is that about right? But that money has since been received.
Yes.
Okay, that's,
Yes.
but there's a lot of other things that complicate it, so that's all I needed to say. Okay. Any other questions, comments about the fiscal position and the annual financial report? All right, 6.1, school and property supplies consent items. The board will take action to approve items 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5. Is there anything that anyone would like pulled out? Can we start with a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Are we okay with moving forward with these? I guess I should have asked that before. No problems with any of the consent items? Got a motion, we got a second. Gary?
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Went through 6.5, okay. 6.6, I'm sorry, 7. Athletics and activities, Danville School Community Park Project. Point 1, the board will take action to approve the plan for name recognition of sponsors for the Danville School Community Park Project. We have a motion to approve.
I motion.
Second. Darrell, second. Any comments, questions on 7.1? Gary?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 7.2, the Big Musical Arts Club, the Big Mac Club at the middle school. Board will take action to approve the Big Musical Arts Club, Big Mac Club, as a voluntary student club at the middle school. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Second.
Second.
Dr. Green, Mrs. Heater. Any comments, questions?
Could I just throw something out there just to have some clarity in it? It's not to just using this as the springboard. The value to officially designate something as a club. You know, we're not paying for the oversight. Like, can you just, so maybe educate me and others, like, why? Like, I know it has value to the students, and I know it's a focus. I know there's all those other interactive and those type of things, but maybe help
I
me?
think from a safety liability kind of standpoint, that if this adult is with students off campus at an event or after school at an event, that we've had board approval that this is a board sanctioned club that we have. So like the model UN club will go to the UN event together, and he'll potentially drive them in a van, and we've said as a board, yes, we approve.
We have
Mr.
responsibility
Peg. We have
to- so on
responsibility
that
for
level.
that organization.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Others? Gary?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 7.4, girls volleyball.
We have Model UN
7-3.
Club, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
made
sorry,
the
that was the Big
mistake of
Mac
saying
group.
that, right,
I'm
yeah.
ahead of you.
Yeah.
Board will take action to approve the Model UN Club as an established club at Danville High School with Chris Pegg as volunteer advisor for the remainder of the 22-23 school year. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Agnes, Dr. Green. Any questions or comments on Model UN? Okay, Terry. You're up.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Okay, 7.4, girls volleyball. The board will take action to add girls volleyball to Danville High School athletics beginning in the 2023 fall season. Motion to approve.
I was going to ask a question before you got to that point,
Okay.
and I don't know if it changes the discussion or not. I was going to offer up a thought in the context of the girls volleyball based on some of the discussion we just had, and I just wanted to inject that into the discussion before we got to a voting process. And I don't know if it matters or not, but if I can have the time to do that. I just think that at this juncture, in our uncertainty and certainly what our published financial position is, that taking on any added cost that's more of a want than a need is something we should look really hard at as a community. Until we know where our budgets and our finances set, I think adding anything that we have discretion on should be highly scrutinized, and I'm looking at girls volleyball. I'm athletic, I have kids, I understand it, but is this the time and the place? Is this a need or a want? And it's not free, and so I just, before we voted, I just wanted to get that out, that I don't think this is the time to do it.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Actually, don't we do the motion in a second before we do the discussion? I
Oh,
thought.
I'm sorry. That's why I wasn't
Okay.
sure. That's why I said, like, you let me go, so I kept
Thought
going.
I thought I missed something. Thought I missed something there, but go ahead.
Nobody stopped me, so I was keeping on going.
Motion and a second, and then we can discuss.
So moved.
So moved.
Well, I
Mr.
just
Clauser,
Mr.
second.
Clauser,
Vote. I figured.
Second.
Table.
Second.
Peter's
My
a
thought was
second. Okay.
tabling it.
Motion to table.
We'll keep Mr.
Well, I don't know
Mr.
if I
Huron's
can.
record, Mr. Huron's discussion on the record. That's
Where would
fine.
where would I make a motion to table then? That was the other thought. I had.
Hold on, Chris. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Would we have a better idea where the board stands after Friday's meeting? Financially, I mean, can we?
What meeting is Friday?
I'm sorry, February.
I was like,
I'm pushing
Yeah,
things
I was gonna
along.
say, what are you
I'm
talking
pushing.
about?
I'm moving
We're
things along a
almost
little
there.
quick
At least
here.
it started with an F.
That's close enough, right? February's meeting, will we have a better understanding then at where the board stands? I'm sorry, where the school stands as far as our budget goes? And can we get an idea of what
Cost.
this is going to cost us for the year?
Is this a question for me?
For whoever.
Okay, because, or Dr. Need, I will say we'll know more in February, and then we'll know more in March, more in April, more in May, more in June. Every month, we know a little bit more. I feel comfortable that I know where we stand, but I know some of you don't. I understand that. I've been in this field for 30-some years. So yes, absolutely, we would know more.
Would it make some of the members with some concerns about this more comfortable if we table it till February? Where they could have a better understanding of?
Okay, I'll take it from this perspective because I've been one that's been a strong advocate of this. I can go through this and find 50 things that have less value that are costing us more than girls volleyball does when we have 100 kids that want to do it. That's my personal opinion. I can go through furniture, I can go through advertising, I can go boom, 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 and say, why are we doing all these things? We have 100 kids that are interested in the sport. This sport, and you can vote how you want to vote, there are 600 and some schools in Pennsylvania that play this. And I love lacrosse. I'm not against any sport. I like field hockey. I love sports. I feel like Chris does. I'm a sports advocate. There are twice as many schools that have girls volleyball. It seems like every time we bring something, and I'm talking historically, and this is nobody here's fault, but I remember when we tried to get lacrosse in here, it was a girls' sport, and it was a battle for years. if it's a boys' sport, it seems to go much easier. Sorry, I'm just saying. It's just the way it seems. It's perception, from my perspective, that's how I see it. I'm comfortable that the district financially and fiscally will be able to deal with this. The first year will be a little more difficult than the years following that. Mr. Albertson articulated some of the challenges with scheduling. I think I was pretty clear in the athletic committee meeting that I certainly understand the challenges you have, but also don't have an awful lot of patience for the Heartland when sometimes they put some of those obstacles in front of us. Like, if we're starting a sport and you need it to have an actual division, then all those schools should be playing us in the first year. I don't care what their cycle is. I made some comments about football as well. This is a Heartland issue if they can't schedule us. So that's my personal opinion, but I'm only one person, and I respect anybody else's position on this. I don't have any skin in the game with volleyball. I just think it's good for kids. It's the only PIAA inter-district sponsored sport we have in Pennsylvania that Danville does not have. It's the only one. So that's my feeling. I get the financial part of it, but I get kind of frustrated when I go through a lot of the things we do spend on, and then I see something our girls want so badly. And
Is
yeah.
there a downfall of waiting a month?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is there a downfall of waiting a month and doing it
Is
in
there a
February?
downfall? I think Brian's better to answer that because I don't know how the scheduling piece plays out. And you're here, so Mr. Albertson, waiting a month? Is that Mr. Albertson? I don't have my glasses on.
It is.
Sorry, let me.
It is. He's just working the microphone.
Okay.
The longer we wait, the tougher it's going to be to do scheduling. I said in the athletic committee meeting, I am 40 to 60%, 50%, 60% thinking the PHAC will have a girls volleyball schedule next fall, a league schedule. I'm 90 to 100% the following year they will definitely have one. There's other schools looking at it. There's 6 schools in the PHAC right now. The PHAC bylaws say we have to have 6. There's 6 because some schools just added it for this season, which is the beginning of the 2-year cycle. When it comes to scheduling through PIAA and the league, everything runs on a 2-year cycle when you submit your enrollment for your classifications. Just to give you the short version of that. And so everything runs on a 2-year cycle. I've reached out to some schools thinking this is coming. We can get a schedule for next year. We can do that. Will it be challenging to get a full schedule? Yes, but we can get a schedule. The following year will be a lot easier. But I can do whatever you guys desire. I think it would be good for our students, but there are some challenges also with numbers. I said in the athletic committee meeting, I sent out a survey. Survey came back very positively, but like when we have sign-ups, that happens also. Hey, I can get out of flex period. I'm going to go down for sign-ups, and then when practice starts, half of those students show up. But that's just the nature of it, and we won't know until we have an official sign-up how many students we have.
We acknowledge that in athletic committee, and I think I said a third. Yeah. But that's still 30. Right. That's, what do they play, 6 in volleyball?
They play 6. Most teams, I think, have 15 to 20 girls on them. Yeah. I think is the average.
Mr. Albertson, we also talked at the athletic committee that the initial cost would be closer to around 30, so?
30 to 32 is my general guesstimate, but that may be down a little bit depending on what type of uniforms we go with. And we do a lot of Nike stuff. And whether we do that, the type of volleyballs we use. Also, at the middle school that we talked about, that is set up, has lines, has the holes to accept the net. Our gym is big enough for the amount of fans that come to those games, according to other athletic directors that I've spoken to. We have enough seating down there and all that stuff. So that cost won't be as much if we had to strip the whole floor here at the high school and put the lines on that.
And that's just the initial cost, the first year cost.
Right. Then your cost is, like, we don't have to buy the stand they call it a coaching stand, but it's for the official to sit on. You have to have that. We won't have to buy that every year, the net every year. You're just looking at more game balls, replacing some uniforms, officials, and transportation and coaches costs. And the coach's cost, when I put that in that number, was for a first-year coach. If we would get someone that has experience for our matrix, that cost could go up a little bit.
Other comments, questions from anyone?
Are there any sports, basketball, golf, that you could do away with? Bowling?
I kind of think that's the natural order of things. Is we'll see what happens if we do bring this in, because we may find that there's not enough demand for another sport. I think the kids drive that. I don't think we should drive that. That's just my personal philosophy. Now, if we get into, obviously, budgetary challenges to the point where we need to drop things, fine. But I don't think that's the conversation just yet, Darrell. I think it's a good question. But if we find that there's not interest somewhere else because the kids want to play this sport, well, to me, the kids drive those decisions, not the adults, not the AD, the principal,
I
the
don't know
president,
how many
or
people
any
are
of
in
us.
bowling anymore or golf. Not a lot.
Yeah.
We are going to present numbers at the next athletics committee. That's
Yes.
something the committee asked for, but we're not offering anything that we can't field, if that makes sense right now.
Yeah, I got it.
Any other comments? Do we want to vote, or do we want to entertain a different motion?
I make a motion to table this until we have a better position on our finances and we send clear messaging to the community. I'm for this. I don't want the message to be lost in my feelings on being responsible. But we're talking about a budget deficit. To make the case that suddenly that this has to happen now, discounting the planning and everything went into it. I was at the athletic committee meeting. I just think this is not the time to do it until we get our house in order. So I make a motion to table it.
So then procedurally, because there was already a pending motion, if the original parties that made the motion and second are willing to do a motion to amend to table.
And who made that initial motion in the second? Do we have that, Terry?
I will in a second.
Just tabling this till next
Mr. Clauser.
meeting.
Mr. Clauser made
Mr.
it.
Clauser made the motion.
Yeah, until we get better understanding of
We
some of
made
the
the
things
motion
that
to
go in and
approve
making the
initially.
decision.
Mr. Clauser made the motion to approve, and we had a second by Mrs. Heater.
Okay. Are you amending your motion to approve?
I don't see a problem with tabling it until February, so everybody has, it makes everybody on the board more comfortable.
Whoa, 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 whoa. When you say everybody, that means all 9.
Well, okay, fiscally,
yeah.
will it make everybody on the board more comfortable?
No.
No.
So what we're saying is let's rush it through now.
Don't put words.
As opposed to
don't
just-
don't
Well,
put
no,
words
I'm
in my
asking.
mouth. Don't put words in my mouth.
No, no, wait, I'm not talking to you.
Okay, well, that's what you just
Somebody
said.
said no, and I'm referring to
Okay,
that.
all right.
So
We said we're saying and we're rushing. Go ahead, you can continue.
as opposed to just simply waiting until the better numbers are here, it's costing us nothing to do that. He said he could get the schedule just fine next month, just like we could do it this month. I don't see an issue with just waiting till next month. And you're still gonna accomplish your goal and still have the board as a whole, most everybody, more and to go on right along with it.
Okay, so your motion, excuse me, your motion's amended. Another water. Talking too much.
It's like Chris said, I'm certainly not against it. I think it's a good thing, but I really would like to see, and how can anybody blame me? No offense. We've had 3 superintendents and 3 different sets of numbers.
Right.
That varied desperately, millions of dollars. Let's just be positive.
Right.
Where we stand.
You're amending your motion.
Yes, sir.
Are we?
And
Motion's
then-
amended.
Correct.
So we're entertaining an additional motion, which I think Chris made a motion, or is this the amended motion coming from Mike?
It would be the amended motion from Mike.
Are you seconding, Chris, to table?
I made the motion to table. I thought.
There was already a
needed to get rid of the
motion
other
that
motion
was
first,
pending
Chris.
first, so that's why Mike had to amend his motion.
So he's making a motion to table?
To table,
Correct.
and
So
we're
you could
asking
be
if
the
you want a second, because
Oh,
you've
yeah,
already.
I would,
So we
I
have a
think the smart
second.
thing to do is table.
Do we have any conversation about the motion to table the girls' volleyball?
I just add a couple comments
Yeah.
about it. Just a couple things to think about. I know we're talking about mental health, and you know, volleyball, I'm speaking from a personal experience with a niece of mine. Volleyball is a chance for a certain group of schools or girls who might not be able to do basketball, or they might not be able to do track, or they might not be able to do other girls' sports at that level. And speaking of mental health, I feel that with having the volleyball, it gives that group of girls a chance to have the feeling of belonging, is what I'm going to say. I'm also going to say that I 100% agree with what Wayne says about things in there that do not need to be in there as far as expenses. I've worked here 30 years. I know what's being spent. I saw what was being tossed year after year after year. There are lots of things that you can definitely take out for next year that don't need to be in there to cover a cost like this, and that's all.
Other comments on the motion to table?
Can I make a comment?
This is a very healthy discussion. I really appreciate it.
So I fully support having a girls volleyball team. I tend to stay out of sports discussions for a lot of different reasons. But I fully support it. But I'm actually failing to see the harm of tabling it for a month. And so from the perspective of the logical consistency of the things that we've said in the past, for the concern for the budget, I kind of feel like that there's very little harm. I'm not seeing the direct harm to girls, because I think in the end what will end up happening is that we'll end up passing it when certain members of the board feel more comfortable. And that I'm not hearing that it sounds like a month delay will catastrophically affect the schedule. So from my perspective, I just wanted to state that despite the fact that I fully support this from the perspective of mental health, from just the perspective of providing any opportunity to the kids that we can possibly afford to provide that makes sense, because we are here for the benefit of the kids, not for the benefit of anything else. But we should be fiscally responsible. And everything Chris has said makes sense to me, that if we're going to be cautious and take this responsibility seriously, I see very little harm in delaying it, so at least two of our members can be more comfortable with the idea of doing it.
Other comments, questions?
One adder. I think that I would offer that if in the context, and this one is in the context of girls volleyball, if we're going to offer up and say there's offsets that we feel we have in the budget, we should be looking at those offsets before the conversation of girls volleyball. And if they are of value to look at in that context, we should qualify and quantify them. We quantified that it's going to be $32,000 to $50,000 from the athletic committee for girls volleyball. We've made some comments, and I respect wholeheartedly those. Let's quantify them and have that level of conversation and make decisions.
You're saying you'd like me to bring those up right now? I have it right here. That's what you're looking for. It sounds like that's what you're asking us to do.
And I do think we could present that. I know I'm not a board member, sorry. In February, when we're looking at our budget, I think that is our hope to say, hey, these were the athletic costs in the past. This is where we're trimming. This is where it's growing, and go department by department doing that. So I do hope some of those line items that you're concerned about we're addressing.
Want me to talk
But-
about a couple $100,000 in office furniture over the last 4 years? You
Well,
want to talk about $188,000 at the elementary? You want to talk about a feasibility study that's gathering dust that cost us $125,000? I'll have that conversation with you.
No, I would like to say we absolutely should have those conversations. Why wouldn't we? And why in the context of talking about girls volleyball, we start to throw that mud around? That makes no sense.
Well, the reason
that's not respectful to the whole board, Wayne. Excuse me.
No,
thank you. I wasn't
ahead,
complete.
now-
Thank you.
now
Fair
respond,
enough.
Chris.
We're throwing out there that we have wastefulness in our community, okay? And it comes out in the context of discussing girls volleyball. I think that's not the time and place. I think we should have those conversations. We should have them before girls volleyball, before it ever became a context. So I wasn't here to challenge, like, do we have money in the budget? I'm saying we've sat here as a group. We've had some hard conversations. I have been on the board through those hard conversations. And there's a lot that was done there, and I'm not going to relive the past. But if we're going to take our responsibilities seriously and say we're talking about budgetary and bringing us and crossing that line of the deficit back into a better operating condition, we should be able to qualify it so that we can make an informed data-based decision whether girls volleyball is the right time and place. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm not asking you to defend why you feel there's opportunity, but I also want to say, like, if we're going to start saying wasteful spending here, wasteful spending there, that's another discussion.
Well, you just told me that you wanted it before we voted on it, and that's what I was intending to do. I don't want to do that because it's grandstanding, but it sounded like you were challenging it, so.
You're going to take
So
a
we were-
position that hasn't been vetted by the organization. So,
Right here, you
so you're
approved
going to say there was wasteful spending
you
on something
approved
that I'm not in a position to have that constructive discussion with you. So if we want to have that, let's be prepared to have it.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking for. I'm
right.
not trying to challenge your wrong or right. Please take this in context.
Okay.
I'm just trying to have a data-based decision based on the contextual reasons that we're even talking about this, is we're running in the red. And no one's been able to tell me, no, we're not, Chris, we're actually here. So I'm saying, based on those facts, this isn't the time to make that decision.
Once again, I respect your opinion. It's healthy discussion until the last minute or two. Any other comments or questions? The only thing we have to vote on is the motion to table, correct? Terry, we're ready.
Mr. Vognetz,
No.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
No.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
No. 5-3?
5-4, yes.
Okay. All right, we are tabling the motion. We'll take it up in the future. Eight point one, tuition paid, agriculture, animal, plant, veterinary science program student. Board will take action to accept a transfer student number 113944 to Danville Area School District as a tuition-paying student to enroll in our agriculture, animal, plant, veterinary science, and related fields program using Section 1809 of the PA School Code. The student's family resides in the Shikellamy School District, who will be responsible for paying the tuition. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Comments, questions on accepting a tuition-paying student from the Shikellamy District into our ag program? No? Okay. Terry, you're up.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
No. School and Community Relations, 10.1, December 2022 Finance Reports. Those are just for your review, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Okay. 10.2, December 2022 Cash Receipts, once again for review. Okay. 10.3, Bills for Payment. We will need some action on this. Recommended action, the board will take action to approve the bills for payment for December 1st, 2022 through January 4th, 2023 as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second. Any comments on the bills? Questions? Terry?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.4, Tax Resolution. The board will take action to approve the resolution not to increase real estate tax rate above the Act 1 Index Index for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. We do have an attachment. That number is 4.1%, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second. Comments, questions? Everybody understand what you're approving here if you go along with this? This would say that we cannot exceed the 4.1% increase in the real estate tax, and we also will not be able to apply for exceptions to go beyond that
This year.
this
Coming
year.
up. Okay.
Correct.
Do we have, just out of curiosity, and maybe I missed it, do we have revenue predictions if we were to do part or full of, or is that going to come in February?
That will come in February. There is a different process we need to follow for the budget. Should we choose to exceed the Act 1 index, that will just change our process for the spring if we go there. There's like kind of more public accountability for the budget process.
Sure,
but
but
I think that we would feel comfortable that we can present you a balanced budget with 4.1.
That's sort of what I was getting at. That's what I was trying to make sure I understood.
I'm not saying it will be 4.1. I'm just saying, you know.
Right, within
with
that,
that window.
within that scope,
if
and
that
looking at cost cutting and other things, we can
Correct.
come to a balanced budget.
You probably won't see a state number until after we approve the local number. Until we will probably approve our budget at least 2 or 3 weeks minimum before the state gives you any indication of where they're going. So you won't have all of those numbers. A budget's an estimate, really.
We'll have our best guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments on the Act 1 resolution, what this means?
Dr. Green,
Yes?
Mrs. Heater, Mr. Huron,
No.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Personnel consent items. Board will take action to approve personnel items 11.2 to 11.12. Please take a look through these, and then we'll see where we'd like to go if we're going with all of those. Anybody have any problems with any of them? Don't want included as consent. Okay to move on? Good. All good? Okay, motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Carrie?
Who's second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes?
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Substitute list.
Yep.
11.2, did I miss something?
Oh, I was just say, if I might just interject for just a moment. In that process, we just hired our new director of buildings and grounds, and Mr. George is with us, so
Oh.
just wanted to give him a chance to say hello to the board.
Welcome, Mr. George.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank-
George. We're excited for you to begin.
Thank you and welcome. Mr. Moser, welcome to you also. I know this is your first meeting officially. Bring that up.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice meeting you.
Policy and insurance, 12.1. We have, board will take action to approve items 12.2 to 12.5 under consent. Look, see if there's anything you would like us to pull. Okay. Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second. Comments, questions? Terry?
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yep.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Transportation, 13.1, the bus driver list. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the bus driver list for the 2022-2023 school year as presented, pending the receipt of all required clearances and documentation. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Comments, questions? Terry?
Mr. Reichert.
Abstain.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yep.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Board concerns and items for the next meeting agenda. Anything from anyone? I think obviously we want some clarification on the federal money in the budget. That's become clear through the last half hour or so. Mr. Clauser?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is actually up to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible or not, but is it possible sometime from now until next month, you pointed out items of concern maybe that could be stricken from a budget? When we work up that proposal for next, I'm sorry, proposal's the wrong word. When you come next week with the better numbers for this budget, could we maybe have that include some of the things in there that could be stricken from that budget so we get a really good idea of?
Yeah, I actually appreciate the opportunity this year, hopefully, for us to be a part of the process. Last year, I didn't feel we were any part of the process if you weren't on the committee itself. And I came on the board late. I wasn't here till February. First meeting was in March. But it just really felt like it was a very closed-off process. So, yeah, definitely we can do that.
I'd appreciate it if you go through, reading that thing gives me a headache. It really does. If you know how to do it, it makes it a lot easier.
I've just dealt with them for a lot of years, that's all.
And if you guys, if you could get together maybe sometime this month and that would be awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
I'd
think,
be happy for the three of us to meet specifically about that. And
Right.
we certainly want to be as transparent as possible. And so even in thinking about this budget process, we want to look at it in February, hear your ideas, come back in March, and make it a work in progress throughout the spring.
right. Other board items for the next meeting or anything between now and then? I know there's some committee meetings going on. Dr. Green.
Can I just acknowledge these? I just want to say thank you to the first grade
Yeah,
class
great.
that did these cards. And I got cards specifically from Mrs. Zosh's class, and I would just like to acknowledge how much I appreciate them being done and how nice it is to sort of receive these little efforts from the kids and to see that, this is the reason that we do this. And the thoughtful card we got from Dr. Need, too. I appreciate that as well.
Yep.
We certainly appreciate all that you give to the district, all of you, so thank you.
Other items? I know you have a committee meeting coming up. If we could please be as open about our committees and when they're being held, where they're being held, and get that out to the public and to the other board members. We are able to attend. We have to be careful in what our participation looks like with quorum and things else.
And I've been sending out weekly communications on Fridays. I know it's one more email to check, but I've been putting agendas for committee meetings and times and dates ahead of time and then filling in those notes after. So if you're not able to attend, hopefully you're able to be aware of what's happening. And I'll continue to do that so that committee meeting information is shared as much as possible.
Okay. Anything else? Public comment? 2 people here? No? Nothing? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
On favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you.